Today, we're diving into the rich world of hardwood flooring with Michael Keroack, founder of Authentic Hardwood Flooring. With over 30 years of experience, Michael has built a reputation for exceptional craftsmanship and quality, establishing his Atlanta-based company as a leader in the industry. Whether you're in the middle of a home renovation or dreaming up your next custom build, choosing the right hardwood can take your space from ordinary to extraordinary. So crack open a cold one and join us as we explore everything from durability tips to jaw-dropping design ideas that make your floors the star of the show. Let's get building.
Welcome back to another episode of Building, Brews, and Barbecue. I'm one of your co-hosts, Vince Longo, and this is
Nathan Walters.
And we're here today to bring you the best in brilliance in all things building, and we're blessed today to have the extraordinaire, Michael Keroack
right.
with Authentic Hardwood Flooring. Michael has one of the best hardwood floor companies in Atlanta, and funny, I brought you in, Mike, because I've known you forever. We've got ties all the way back. Mike is from Connecticut. Originally, I'm from New York, but Mike did my first house that I ever worked on in 1999. Mike came in and did the floors, and we've had that relationship ever since, and it's been awesome. You've been an awesome business partner, and it's funny that before this, we've actually been talking now for about an hour and a half before this about all things business. We could have probably done 2 other podcasts, and we just been sharing. Really, it's been amazing how far your business has come from when you were out there hammering in floors and making it happen yourself to where you are today with this incredible company that's growing and just all focused on hardwood flooring. And that's evolved over the years, which has been really cool to watch and see the different types of flooring and how you go through seasons of different type. But Michael, welcome to the show. I'd love for you to introduce yourself and tell us a little something.
So, I'm Michael Keroack, owner, founder of Authentic Hardwood Floors, and I really appreciate the opportunity. It's great to be here and do this podcast with you. Also, real proud of your success. We both come from humble beginnings, to say the least, right? And it's been great. It's been a great ride. A lot of ups and downs. We've both been through them over the years, for sure, right? A lot of heartache. But like we were sharing earlier, I have it today better than I've ever had it. And we've both been in business. I guess we just did our 25th year.
Yes.
So, I'm a hardwood floor guy out of high school, right? 1986.
Wow.
So 38 years, maybe pushing 39 years in the industry. But it's great to be considered a trade partner.
Yeah.
And that's what we strive for, is to be a trade partner, someone that you can count on 100%, just like we were an employee.
Yeah. And you're exactly right. And I think hardwood floors is and I think people mistake that, it's such a major part of the home. If you think about it, when you walk into anyone's house, your tendency is not to look up at the ceiling, it's to look down at the floors, and it's such a large part of the home. And that's why we typically will want to start with that early. We want a homeowner, whether they are renovating their home, building a new home, they have a designer or not, we want them to be thinking of their hardwood floors, sometimes even before cabinets. That's the big misnomer, right?
Sure.
Nathan, you see that in your market in Oklahoma, that, you think, tile, cabinetry. But I think hardwood floors with the grains setting that tone.
Yep.
Is that what you're seeing in your market in Oklahoma?
We see a lot of it. In Oklahoma, though, we're a little different than you guys. We don't get as many cool. When I come here, I get to see all kinds of cool stuff that you guys are doing. We really, on our site finish stuff, have really been, white oak, hickory. Like it stays kind of in there, but we get to have fun with patterns, chevron pattern, herringbone pattern, things of that nature. But coming here, it's always so fun, like listening to you talk about some of the products that you guys get to use. We don't get some of that cool stuff, but the grain patterns matter, everything matters, and we love hardwood floors.
Yeah, we find that in the past and with some of our customers that they have the wood picked out species and size, but the color's an afterthought. And they'll say, hey, we usually just put some stain colors down when it comes time to sand the floor. But we're finding that designers are coming to us saying, hey, I need the stain color nailed down because that is going to impact cabinets It's going to impact some hoods, mantles, a lot of other stuff, especially when Vince is incorporating more wood beams and things like that on the interior of the house. So again, like Vince says, if you can get them to figure out what type of wood, the width, and then the color, it's just one thing that's already decided. And then when you get into sanding and finishing the floors, we already have such a head start as to where this is going to go. But years ago, we would have no idea, like literally no idea what the color is going to be. We never asked. And as a floor guy, we didn't even care. But now it seems to be a lot more important.
I agree. That's the way it went for us. Hey, do you want white oak? Do you want hickory? Okay. What size plank? Okay. What direction? All right. We go lay it. Okay. Drywall goes up. Let's go lay the wood floor. Then you're right. Hey, when we get to the end, we'll have you put some samples down.
That's right.
That was the same way we did it, and you're right. We're not seeing it that way anymore. We're seeing designers want to pick those colors early.
Well, and it's funny because it used to start back when years and years ago, you'd come out and do like one spot samples,
Yep.
right? And then I remember that the first time we ever called you and say, hey, Mike, we need a sample in this room because the light at this time of the day, and then this over here. You're like, what are we doing here? And then the fun part about that is it became not 2 samples, but like 8 samples and certain percentages of each. And then we'd have to kind of barricade off the room for like a week because you didn't want somebody to get dust or
Walk on it.
Can't walk on it. And
so what we do now is we just build mock-up floor samples in our workshop. We'll source the material. We have it there. You want 5-inch white oak, we'll just make it up and then we'll quarter it off, blue tape it, 4 quarters, give 4 options. And then the designers and the homeowners are carrying it around the house, or she's taking it to the tile store, whatever's needed. But what I wanted to say was that one of the reasons that we're picking colors so early is builders are now doing a lot of like floating vanities.
Oh, yeah.
And the stoves are sitting on legs. So we have a job where a lot of the cabinetry, you could see all the way underneath it. So we're having to go there, sand, and know the color because we're staining first.
Yeah.
But still not ready to sand the whole floor. So we'll go around and sand and stain where we have those cabinets going in. And other times it would just be like, I wish we could do a better job, but we didn't think that far ahead.
Right.
So the builder was just putting vanities in because he didn't know the stain color. And then we go there, and because we can't get machines under there, we just wish we could have done a better job. And we're like, gee, if we had just known the color.
Right.
So there's a lot of benefits to that for sure.
Yeah. And not only color, I know it, because it just seems like in the houses now, we got the species, right? Where you talked about the species. Number one, is it white oak, is that the most common you still see?
Yeah. Designers got to have it.
Got to have it.
Over the red oak, right?
Yes.
So there's red oak and white oak. Back when early on in my career, red oak was more money than white. Now, white oak has gotten to $3 a square foot more than red in the select grading.
Wow.
It's really, really gotten out of control. In fact, select white oak can be almost $3 more than a number 1 common character grade white oak.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah, we just quoted a big project.
And explain that, because that's something we've talked about over the years, is the difference between a select and a number 1 and our thoughts around that, which is interesting.
So I think the select is clear. Boards are more uniform. There's very little knots, and if they are, they're just what we call pinhole knots. The character, we don't want to say the knots are as big where you have open knots, but there are large knots. There's cracks. There's black grain. But that's the look of the house. Like, that is what really looks good. Now, even though select clear oak might be more money, it's not as good a look in a lot of cases. Then you have another house the next day, and it's really modern. Very little trim.
Sure.
The select seems to go well. Also, the narrower board works well. Seems like all the builders are, if it's character grade, it's always wide board. It's usually, how wide can we get it? Like, that's what we hear. And, there's all different reasons as to what limitations you have with the widths, but we generally, price point, 5-inch character grade white oak. And where we're getting it from the mill lets us determine the lengths in the character grade. So we can tell them whether we want 2 to 14, 2 to 10. So we could tell them the lengths that we want it to come, which helps a lot.
You can customize that.
Yeah. So we have the ability to tell them what lengths we want.
Right from the mill.
Yep.
That's
So
pretty incredible.
it works out really, because again, everybody wants long boards, and it's hard when you're just ordering from these big box store mills that are just mass producing, because it's random length. You cut open the bundles, pile of shorts. I have no control over that, but we do have a good relationship with someone out of Tennessee, and they allow us to do 2 to 8s, 2 to 10s, 2 to 12s, 2 to 14 in length. So you're still getting varied lengths. But it's been good.
Yeah, and we've done the select floors, the select grade, and to me it looks just like a basketball court. So uniform,
Almost looks pre-finished.
Yeah, and I've always said, as a builder, wouldn't it be? I think basketball would be a whole lot more interesting. Oklahoma, I think, would be a better game to watch. If they were using number one comment.
Number one, that'd
be a warmer, far better game.
I'm gonna tell you guys, being in my market, I'm sure it exists. I've never heard of this. So I've never been asked to do select grade.
Really?
Never. We've never been asked.
Oh, that's
we use the number one, and that's I've never been asked. Hey, okay, do you have a select grade? I'm learning something.
So in the remodeling industry side of things, other than there's new build and then remodeling, a lot of times we just go in the house and we determine what you already have.
Sure.
So if you've got red oak, white oak, whatever width, whatever grade, we're just going to add to what you have. So the builder will say, hey, I need to patch this, I'm taking this wall down, we need to add more. A lot of select grade oak was used in houses older than 1975.
Okay.
So in the more affluent areas of Atlanta, those fancier houses, they were just doing select oak standard back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. So that's where it gets expensive.
Okay.
Now you got white oak. Now you've got select. So then we almost, the homeowner doesn't have a choice.
Yeah,
this is like the builder's like, whatever it is. We got to match it. In new construction, you could kind of, they could get what they want, and they can use, there's different price points.
Yep.
But I have select in my house because I started putting the floors in it 25 years ago, and that was the thing back then, select.
Gotcha. You'd touched on something because you haven't done that much select in Oklahoma.
No.
Are you seeing a lot of designs in the floor? I think that's one of the big trends here. We'll touch on that in a little bit, but what are you seeing any of your customers asking for specific looks, feels?
Some. We did more chevron pattern, herringbone pattern years ago, to be honest with you. I've actually seen more of a, hey, let's get a 5 or 7 inch in, run it all one direction, which is funny because in, I don't know, 2016, 17, 18, we did way more chevron patterns, herringbone patterns, did those things, we're asked to do those now. You're right, we did hickory for a long time. White oak is what, it's not even a question anymore, it feels like. Put in white oak. We want the character. But no, we're not seeing many designs.
What about mesquite?
No?
You don't know anything about mesquite?
I mean, I know.
Have you done it with flooring?
I cook with it.
I know in Texas they do a lot of mesquite.
Really? Yeah. Oddly enough, you would think Oklahoma and Texas would be very similar. We build completely different.
Oh,
we don't use a lot of the same products. It's very interesting. To be honest with you, we have more in common with how you guys build here than with how they build in Texas, which is extremely interesting. Like coming here, it's one of the reasons we bonded as well. Is when I came and visited them in 2016, I was like, you guys kind of doing the same stuff we do, because we go to other parts of the country and I can learn some cool ideas, but I'm like, man, you guys do things completely different than we do it. But yeah, mesquite, I've never been asked to put in mesquite.
Yeah.
Hickory or oak.
It's not asked here in Atlanta.
Yeah.
I have a brother that lives in Austin, Texas.
Yep.
And he asked me about it. And I'm like, there's no call for it here. And he says I think maybe probably do accessibility or something, maybe
hill country. Maybe they're doing it in the hill country.
Yeah.
Out between Austin and San Antonio.
What's the Mike, what's the top 3 species you're asked for? Rank them. Number 1, number 2, number 3 that you think are the hottest selling or the most asked for.
White oak, and then white oak, and then white oak.
Oh, so that's the top.
Agreed. I agree. I couldn't agree more.
It's just so dominated.
So we have a customer that wanted her floors to be white oak so bad, and people told her that it was white oak. And when I showed up and said, "Yeah, well, this is red oak," and she looked at me like, "What?" And I could just see it in her face how disappointed she was. And so she's going to try to convince her husband to rip it out to put in white oak. And I was like, "You got a lot of floor here," and I was trying to convince her we're going to get a stain color that you'll like.
Right.
You can still tell people you got white oak. I don't care. But yeah, it is what we sell, what we do a lot. That and a good bit of ash.
Oh, okay.
But ash is we do it more for modern contemporary houses.
Yeah,
that's a lighter stain.
Yeah, it's a really white. It has the same grain as oak.
Okay.
So it has that oak grain to it, a little bit softer, and then we do a good bit of walnut, like the black walnut. It's American. We do more American walnut. There's a lot of different walnuts.
Okay.
American walnut is priced right, and
okay,
we do a good bit of that as well.
Were you guys ever in the around here design wise? Did you guys Oklahoma? It was crazy. Were you guys ever in that like French country, glazing walls?
It's called Venetian plaster.
Yeah, did you guys get into that in like 2011? Anything around there?
We're doing it now. Now we're seeing more. I'm getting more projects that are coming across my plate with the plasters.
Okay,
more like the Alice Beach down on 30A and Panhandle. Plasters that are rubbed shiny. A little bit of rusticated here and there, but for the most part, the smooth plasters where they go all the way to the floor.
Sure. That's what I was asking, because it's funny. You mentioned something earlier, Vin, about, hey, do a 75% this, 25% this. Sometimes I wish I could go back to 2011 because we put in red oak and we stained it coffee brown.
Okay.
Every single house. And sometimes I'm like,
what kind of stain do you use?
I'm trying to think.
Is it called Duraseal?
Yes.
So that's made by Minwax.
Yes, Minwax. Yep.
Owned by Sherwin-Williams.
Okay.
The reason they came out with Duraseal is because Minwax had to change. This is what I was told.
Yeah.
Minwax has changed the formula quite a bit to stay compliant.
Okay.
And we felt that Minwax took too long to dry, things like that. So they come out with Duraseal. It's supposedly dries in an hour.
Uh-huh.
You want more than that. But they have more colors than Minwax, even though the colors are interchangeable. Provincial Minwax is the same as Provincial Duraseal.
Yep.
But they're also blend better.
Okay.
So they're really made to mix.
Got it.
But and then do you guys, and if I'm getting off track, do you guys use oil-based finish or water-based?
So it was oil-based forever. Forever. Then as people started moving to more matte finishes, we got way more into like a water-based.
Do you know the manufacturers of the products of the water-based? So
I'm trying to think of it. Is it Bona?
Yeah.
Yes.
So in my opinion, again, what I'm talking about is an opinion.
Yeah.
But the reason that we use Bona Traffic HD, Bona makes several different lines. Traffic HD, we consider it the best. The reason that it's good is because it's non-yellowing.
Yep.
No harmful smells, no off-gassing. But the Traffic HD comes with a catalyst, so it's a 2-component product. So the catalyst is the hardener that you add to it when you're going to use it. So you buy it by the gallon.
Okay.
Comes with a little bottle of hardener.
Oh, all right.
The other Bona products are a lot less money, but they're not 2-component and they're not non-yellowing.
Okay.
So our competition says, I'm using Bona water-based finish. We like to specify, and we put it in our contracts and we put it in our estimates. We're going to use Traffic HD here in Atlanta, and I don't know the market there, $148 a gallon. So
wow.
Our pricing, $1.08 a square foot more to do the job in water-based Traffic HD versus the oil. However, you can buy water-based made by Bona on the shelf right below it for $70 a gallon.
Sure.
And the consumer can't tell by looking at it. You don't know until you see what benefits you didn't get down the road.
Yeah.
So we like to be transparent. Like, we don't just say Bona water-based, because I believe that if you're going to use a water-based finish, use the one that gives you all the benefits.
Yeah, that's
the
right.
non-yellowing is huge.
Okay.
Especially with these colors.
Mm-hmm.
You do an oil-based finish on these, it's going to change it immediately.
Yes, it is.
And it's going to start yellowing right away. So when a designer asks for these newer colors, we tell them right off the bat that we're going with a water-based finish. We don't give them the option.
Yeah.
And they're usually fine with that. And it's usually once you tell them non-yellowing, they like all that.
Oh, yeah.
Plus, it's convenient for the contractor. Dries in 1 and 3 hours.
Mm.
We could do 2 coats in a day. You don't have to worry about showing up the next day and it's still sticky.
Yep.
Because of the weather. Like we ran into all those problems. Oh, floor's not dry. I can't put another
Well,
coat.
I love having to call you back to fix the footprints in the floor. That always happens.
Always.
People easily get about 20 feet in before they realize, I wonder why it's hard to pick up my feet.
Yeah, I wonder why it's sticky.
Yeah.
And what's that smell?
Yeah, that's right.
But also the cure time of these oil-based polyurethanes, technically or in the literature we read where it says 30 days cure time, right? So we say 24 hours to walk, 48 for furniture, tiptoe for the first couple of weeks. Builders are always pushed, right? You know, I got to get my next crew in here with the water base. It cures in 7 days. Gets to its hardest point. So there's a difference between dry and cure.
Sure.
Floor might be dry enough to walk on, but not cure
Right.
with the oil. But the water base, you're literally walking on the floor 3 hours after we leave.
And you're right.
So nice.
Yeah, and you're right. We had to go water-based because of these colors.
Oh, absolutely.
That's exactly when we started going to these colors. That's when I learned so much about water-based Bona products because these were the colors we wanted. And you're right. When we were using oil-based things, were turning yellow.
Yeah.
Things were, and we're like,
Terrible.
and it was too glossy because everybody wants these muted, matted finishes.
Right. But my question to you is, historically, we've used the oil-based with the three coats of poly and it was always the process. What is a harder surface? Like if you were to say, okay, let's tell the listener the differences in the hardness of the surface.
Oh, the Tropic HD is harder than oil base for
Oh,
sure.
for sure.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no benefit to the oil base other than the cost. It's
Okay.
cheaper. But you'll go to a job and someone's saying, "Hey, I'm resanding my floors because I got to put the house on the market." Well, you're not going to get the benefits. Well, we should just do oil. Right? So, person selling their house, they don't want to spend any more unnecessary money, but the agent or a lot of it is the home stager.
Yep.
Mhm.
They call us in and they'll say, "What can we do?" And I'm like, "We're just going to sand them, pick a color that, everyone will kind of like, maybe not get into anything trendy,
Mm-hmm.
but pretty much we feel that it's kind of a waste of money to do the water base if you're leaving.
Makes sense.
Or if it's rental property, right? Vince knows all about rental property. So they're going to beat it up. I don't care what you do.
Oh, yeah.
How durable it is. We always say, keep your money, save it for the buff and coat in a year when they leave.
Yep.
But
That's right.
don't
Exactly
do a lot
right.
of water based on rental property. But that's getting away from our demographics.
Sure.
Anyway.
Mm-hmm. So, Michael, one of the big questions I get from customers, and you probably do too, Nathan, when they come visit with us, they get so excited, want to get going. They ask me, and I know I'm not the pro, so I'd love your opinion. What should we put in our house? We've got friends now that have pre-finished floors. I know we've talked up until this point about site finished and the pros and cons and the finishes, which is incredible for our listeners. Let's turn into pre-finished. I'd love to get your opinion because we've been in this business so long that I hear pre-finished and I think cheap. I don't think that's the case anymore.
Absolutely not. No, it's a good topic, Vince. I think a lot of times just educating the client, right, as to what's best for their situation. And that's what it's usually about. So when it comes time to decide, should we go with engineered or should we go with solid? Solid hardwood floors technically should not be glued to cement. So we used to put in plywood first to allow ourselves something to nail to, but it raises the floor 1.5 inches.
Yep.
Which throws off door jams and just creates makes the countertop seem lower. It just seems too much of a retrofit.
Mm-hmm.
So we have an engineered product that we like. It's a 9-ply Russian birch, and we can buy that raw wood.
Mm-hmm.
So we install it, sand it, and finish it. And That's for the customer who wants a site finish floor. They don't want the pre-finish. They like the site finish because for the benefits of maintenance and things like that. So what we do is we say, hey, we're going to buy it. And I'm going to back up a little bit. What separates quality pre-finish versus a cheaper pre-finished engineered? The cheaper engineered big box store stuff has a very thin wear layer, the veneer. The thicker the wear layer, the thicker the veneer, the better overall the product is. The thinner wear layer is called peel rolled. It's basically a shaving of oak in a big roll, and they glue it to the plywood. The better quality engineered is a sliced veneer, meaning it's literally a sliced piece of oak glued, adhered to the plywood. When you get into sliced veneers, you can dictate the thickness of that veneer. So we could tell the manufacturer, we need a 4 millimeter minimum. All the other ones, the reason you can't sand them or refinish them down the road is because the millimeter's too thin, and those are like 1.2 millimeters, 1.8s. So maybe getting out of order here, when you get into refinishing them, a lot of times it's just the veneer's not thick enough. But with the quality engineereds, you got a 4.2. We also can have the mill do it as thick as 6 millimeter.
Oh, wow.
The life of real hardwood, 3/4 inch hardwood solid, is only to the tongue. So it doesn't matter what's below the tongue because the life of the floor is from the surface to the tongue.
Sure.
So 6 millimeter is almost as thick as the life of real hardwood.
Oh, wow.
So you could never tell by looking at it that it's not a solid. And they have the luxury of doing the site finish and all that. So when we're getting into what's best for that particular homeowner is, in our opinion, any floor over 4 inches in a solid should be full spread glue and nail.
Okay.
To help stability.
I mean, that glue goes all the way underneath. It's not like you don't take the caulk gun.
Full spread.
It's like you're taking a trowel.
Yeah, a good point, because we see that a lot. We literally full spread. We're also using an adhesive that's a moisture barrier built in it.
And that's what is it's got like a urethane?
It's a urethane base.
It's a urethane.
Yeah.
That makes it waterproof, the glue.
I like to say
water
resistant. Waterproof's a tough thing to say. Even though it might say it on the box.
That's what lands me in court.
Yeah, it's water resistant.
So with that said, as far as the width, when a customer asks us for 7-inch or 8-inch or 9-inch, we prefer to use an engineered product versus a solid.
Sure.
Because the engineered floors, the quality ones with a 9-ply.
What is the ply? You've said that, and so explain that to our listener.
Plywood is made of different thin layers glued together.
Okay.
Some engineered, it's basically a thin layer on the bottom and then a filler piece, which is pretty thick. Other products are made with 3-ply. It's just 3 layers of plywood glued together. We believe in a 9-ply product.
Okay.
And I don't want to get into the weeds as to why we really strongly believe in it. It's just more stable. And we notice whenever it's not a 9-ply, the floor has more chances to move. We also see it less money.
Sure.
Right.
That's a trick that they use to make.
We've talked to manufacturers that have told us that they pay more for the plywood than they do the veneer.
Oh,
if it's a true 9-ply marine grade.
In marine grade,
Baltic birch is really what we're using.
In the marine grade is important because it's more resistant to water,
it's just
moisture.
A stronger wood material that they're gluing together. So anything over 7 inches, we believe that it's a risk even though we're using a full spread glue, because you only have nails every 7 inches, right? We just believe that the floors are more susceptible to cupping, crowning, and all that, especially in new construction when the bones of the house are still damp.
Yep.
So we always say, hey, let's go to engineered, and right off the bat, we get some resistance. Oh, I don't like engineered. It's cheap. We try to say a quality engineered floor is more expensive than a solid. And then if you don't have to buy the engineered in raw wood, you can buy it pre-finished, and that's where we get into the design of the house. The designers start leading the charge as to what they want that pre-finished floor to look like. There's several manufacturers of quality pre-finish. We've got some relations with some good ones, and then it just comes down to there's There's wire brush. There's a lot more texture you could put to the finish when it's factory done.
On the pre-finished and the site finish, do you guys install them at different times? So if you're doing a site finish, when do you install them? And if you're doing a pre-finished, when do you usually install them in the stage of construction?
That's a good question, because the builders that we work for, they want the hardwood under the cabinets because of the detail.
Yep.
So what's happening on this job we have coming up is we installed the kitchen, and that was it. And then he spent a lot of money and time covering that floor proper, but he just didn't want to do the whole house. He was just like, it's just too much. Then we got a call, unfortunately, hey, I need you to come install this bathroom. This vanity has a lot of detail to it, and I can't wrap it with shoe mold.
Yep.
You know that game, right, Vince? So, but generally, we'll install the pre-finish towards the end.
Yep.
But it requires the builders really, really spending the time. And in my opinion, they need a line item in the contract for floor covering. I think a lot of homeowners, they don't realize the cost. And then because it's not a line item, the builder's not doing a proper job. He's rolling out the construction paper that gets ripped up day one. But Vince knows, right?
We talk a lot about this.
If you have a line item in there, you're getting paid. Once you get paid for something, again, now you're responsible. But if you truly know how to quote your jobs and you put in the right number, it's worth every penny. And there's nothing worse than everything's going great, and all of a sudden you get the cleanup ready and you got problems. Pre-finished, the repairs, you can't repair it like you can site finish. So now we're trying to replace boards, and it creates a nightmare. We get builders, quite honestly, that's why they don't want to go with the pre-finish. Because not that they don't trust their subs, there's just so much risk.
There's a lot of risk. What we've actually seen, where we've seen the most trouble with it, is, you're right, our site finish goes in, drywall goes in, site finish goes in, right? So we're laying down the raw wood, and the cabinets go in, and the trim goes in. Well, obviously, we're able to get our baseboards way tighter to the floor when the wood floor is already in. Where we've actually been having some troubles with the pre-finish is it's coming in at the end, and we're getting gaps in the baseboards, and people don't want shoe mold.
So you have to leave the shoe mold off. I mean, you have to leave the baseboard off.
Yeah, you do. You really do.
Yeah, so that's the way we're getting into a lot of that.
So the guys, they'll leave they'll just leave wherever the wood floor is. They'll leave the baseboards off, and then come in after your wood floor and trim it in.
And that's the way we do it on site finished. If there's no shoe mold, we don't even want them. We don't want to sand up to that baseboard, because you're going to put that line from the sander around. So we'll install sand, stain, do 2 coats and leave. And then they'll come in, run all the baseboard. And then we'll come back, buff it, and do the last coat after the baseboard. With the pre-finish, just what you said. And again, because you're going to have gaps if you don't. Plus, we don't want to take a jam saw and cut the bottom of the baseboard, and you block it up. It never really fits.
We just had that issue where I went in because the guys who did use the jam saw didn't do a good job, and I had to replace the baseboard, right? Because the customer's like, look at that. I was like, well, we're going to have some waves. It wasn't a wave. Once I looked at it, I was like, oh, no, they cut it. We'll take that off. Yeah, it's like,
they used a jam saw with a blade that's like 6 years old.
It didn't even look like that. It looked like he used his pocket knife.
Multi-tool.
Yeah, use a multi-tool. Yeah, cut it open. So is that when you're doing pre-finish? Is that what you're doing, or are you waiting and then coming and basing around it later?
That's correct. Yeah, that's what there's sometimes we can't. There's sometimes that we just don't know. But you're exactly right. And with the pre-finished, as Michael and I were talking about, we've got to budget. We now have to budget on a pre-finished floor. And it might be a little bit less, but even for site finish, we still have to protect it. Because if you dream it on a job site, you know what's going to happen? I never thought somebody could pull their car into a living room before. But yet, give it a chance.
Give it a chance. Don't do it.
You're going to show up and say, why is there tire marks on our floor?
That's right. That's right, because someone did it. Someone did it. That's right.
But the darndest thing happens. And so right now, what we're budgeting for our pre-finished floors that are coming in. They're installing them. We're budgeting $2.50 a square foot for materials and labor to cover and protect those floors properly.
But your material's not just the construction paper that's
No, it's ram board.
That's right. It's the base.
That brown board. What is that? MDF.
That's right. That's what we do. It's the base coat is the builder's paper, just because we want that down. Then we go over it with ram board because we can get closer to all the perimeter and it's easier to cut. But that's not a fail-safe. You know, they make you think that ram board is going to be really protective when you go by it. No, that's just a intermediate layer. And then we go over it with the masonite, which is what you're talking about. It's the brown plywood.
4x8 sheets.
It's 4x8, and now you can even get it in a 4x10.
Oh, really?
And it's like 1/8 or 1/4 inch. You're going to spend the money on it. But you know, the dirty little secret is you can also, if you're careful and you're steward of your products, you can actually take those apart and reuse them.
Yeah.
And the other big thing that we have to make sure we do is you don't just lay that down. Now, we might not masonite the entire thing. We'll have our builder's paper, ram board, masonite. We might masonite the high traffic area.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, where most of your subs, main runs where
you're coming in through the garage.
That's right.
We've been doing the same thing. So for years, I wanted to push the culture down to the trades. Hey, this is someone's home. You know, be protective, be this. You're exactly right. We, starting about 18 months ago, started putting it into our budgets as well. No longer are we hoping that every trade will protect this house. We're covering the house. Countertops go in, covering it. Your pre-engineered floors go in, covering them. You're exactly right. You have to budget it because it can be even guys not meaning to tear it up. Walking in, have a rock in the groove of their shoe. They're not meaning to do anything. Yeah. And there it is.
Yeah, or, you know, famously, and I know that's what you were alluding to when you said, the first day it goes down, then it gets ripped up because somebody comes in with something and they drag their ladder, they install something, they got to pull it back, but they never pull it back carefully. And quite honestly, you don't want them with a knife against the floor trying to cut the paper back for what they're doing.
We see it, believe it or not. Right?
I
think the other thing too is what we hear from the quality builders is having the right subs that are housebroken, right? I mean, that's really what it is. Like when we're hiring and we're training, it's more or less, do you have the mindset? How do you live?
Right.
Right. So you'll have a sub walk in and he'll see that brown paper torn up. He'll see the house is already trashed. So he doesn't have to clean up. So he doesn't care if it's a mess. But if he walks in and he sees, wow, someone took a lot of time to cover these floors. Wow, this job site is spotless. There you go. You just set the culture. You set the expectation. Well, this is what it looks like when you leave. Yeah. But sometimes, and again, I like to say that falls on a good project manager, right? But also, he can only work with what he's got for subs. A lot of project managers don't get to do the hiring.
Yep.
So back to the floor covering, and I might overthink this, but I had a customer, every now and again, they'll say, hey, when you're done, will you cover the floors? And my problem with covering the floors is once you charge someone to cover the floor, you're now responsible. If that floor's scratched, you can't say anything because you got paid to protect it.
Yeah.
So what we don't like to do is cover a floor and leave because we don't control the job site. Yep. We may never be back, or we might not come back for a while.
Yeah.
And I just say, hey, I don't want to cover the floor because I don't want to be responsible because I know his subs.
Right.
They're trashing this place.
Yeah.
So with the right tonality, I kind of get around it and just say, hey, now homeowners, we will, but most of the time we're driving the schedule and it's a little different. But I get a little nervous when the builder says, hey, you're going to cover the floors? And I was like, yeah, we have, because it all depends who it is. But I'm sure you guys know the game, right? Once you touch it, you own it.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
Once you charge for it, you definitely
own it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. We talk about that all the time,
So you're almost better off doing it for free so you don't have to be responsible. We talk about that all
somehow it still lands on us.
So
always.
The customer will say, hey, will you help me move this furniture out? And we'll say, hey, here's the deal. We'll help you move it out for free, but we don't want to come and put it back.
It's funny you say that. My wood floor guy, refuses if we have like a warranty thing. Hey, he needs to come back and do a light sand and finish. It's hilarious. He's like, hey, you got to have the furniture out before I get there. He's like, I no longer touch custom
He's been
furniture.
beat up, right?
He's been beat up.
Been beat up.
Look, all of our contracts, everything that we do is because of things we've been beat up on, right? And so it's like one time you're like, oh, you broke the leg on a desk. He's like, nope, I do your wood floor. I don't move your furniture.
So we specify and emphasize we're not furniture movers, but if you need a body, we're here to help.
Yeah.
And this is the reason that you call us and the reason you hire us. And I trust my guys.
Yeah.
I have the right team.
Yeah.
So if I refuse to do something that has blown up in my face, I would be out of business.
Yeah.
So I had a friend tell me, a mutual friend, if you think you're going to run a multi-million-dollar a year business and not take some hard hits every now and again, you're delusional.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Clark Harris.
So yeah, he's awesome.
I read it was funny. It's funny you say that because I read a thing on Instagram, obviously, so it's true, but I read a thing on Instagram yesterday that talked about that. It was like, on my way to make my first 100,000, I lost 10,000. On my way to my first $1 million, I lost 100,000. On my way to my first $10 million, I lost $1 million. And he's like, that's not losing money, that's a tuition. And a guy said that, and I was like, man, because sometimes you feel beat up, right? Business is hard, and you're like, man, what is going on? But you're right. They're lessons that you're learning along the way.
You're going to pay them. You're going to pay them.
And the only way to learn them is paying them.
So that's what's hard when your employee did something wrong and you got to pay for it. But guess what? He's the employee.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't like it, be the employee.
That's right.
That's right.
Be an employee.
That's right.
But I don't charge my guys for mistakes.
Nope, we don't either.
We eat it.
Yep. Same.
We hope it's not because of bad attitude, or we hope it's, honest mistakes happen, and sometimes people just stupid move, right? We've all done them.
Well, we're human.
I've made more mistakes than anybody.
Oh, yeah.
So it's hard for me to judge somebody.
We're human, right? And I think that's what's so hard. I know this is off wood floor, but this is a podcast about business and everything. Man, sometimes it's hard because these homes, as you know, definitely these high-end homes, they are expensive. They are, a lot of times when you're getting into the product that we build, it's what people deem as dream homes, right? So there's emotion, there's money, there's all these things involved. But what's crazy is, on the flip side, it is imperfect material put together by imperfect people.
Oh, we're building houses with the worst material.
Yeah.
Wood.
Well, we're basically
wood.
The way I word it is we're trying to build our customers a Mercedes.
Yeah. In the mud.
Yeah, in the mud.
Well,
Outside.
The thing, Joe, for me, because of our standards and our quality and our culture, we draw in the picky, the hard to work for.
Mm-hmm.
I tell you, I don't mind it. Now, I've worked for unreasonable, and we're good enough and patient enough to get through it. But the picky ones, that's what I built my company for. The ones who are willing to pay because they know they're tough.
Mm-hmm.
They want the top quality. They're more interested in the quality and the experience than they are the money. That's who we want to work for. So we give it to them, even if they're tend to be a little unreasonable. But what happens is then over time, that person becomes such a great reference.
Mm.
We get, if you can please Mrs. Jones, she's brutal. I know her. We're easy. So you'll learn a lot. And if you try to steer away from the ones that are going to be brutal, then go to a different market. But then that market is going to be someone who all they care about is money.
Well, and they're the ones that, too, can appreciate the 9-ply marine grade plywood, with the thicker wear layer, because it's higher quality. And if they're going to be picky, then that's the product for them, which is what you feel confident with your warranty and the deliverables.
And they can afford it if you tell them.
Yeah.
So I think, too, is if you realize that if your standards are high enough, you are more than willing to tell your client what they don't know to ask you. And that's what we're about. We're here to tell you what you don't know to ask, but you really should know this. The person who their standards aren't that high, they don't want you to know a lot of what we want you to know.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason we like 9-ply, but it's a little more money. Well, the other guy's selling on price. He doesn't want you to know a lot. I had a guy say, nah, the more information I give my homeowner, the more ammunition they have to use against me. Well, we're real transparent. Our standards are high enough that we're not worried about telling you too much.
Right.
Yeah.
Getting a little trouble in the quoting process. Sure. We talked about that a little bit, right?
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes, you're a free consultant, but that happens.
Yeah, that happens.
Oh, yeah. And that's why your showroom is so nice, because you have all of those products in there. You've got an awesome place where the customer can come in ahead of time, the designer, all of them, and sit down, lay out what their goals are. Because I know how your team does it. I mean, you're world class in terms of how you operate your business, your team operates. It's really unparalleled, in my opinion, in the flooring, wood flooring business. And I love the way you do it, where you bring them in earlier the better, sit them down, almost train them and inform them on the different levels of pre-finish, the plywood, why it's important, stability, and then your unfinished engineered, and then your true wood plank, finished or unfinished. And I think that's what's an amazing thing. And does that help ease some of those troubles?
Yeah, I think it's huge. I think some of the problems we have is when a contractor sends a client and they start asking questions and we start informing them, and then we find out that we're just a line item on a spreadsheet. And then I've told them a lot, but now what they want isn't in the budget. But when we get them early on, we can talk about the budget. So a lot of times we meet with clients before the contractors even signed a deal with them, because the contractor's like, well, this is our square foot price for flooring, but flooring ranges have changed so much. Yeah. And a lot of times it's just not budgeted high enough, but the contractor, it's hard for him to know what the designer's going to pick.
Yeah, that's right.
So then you get this back and forth, and sometimes the builder might have underquoted it to get the job. They weren't realistic. So
that never happens.
So then it's like all of a sudden everything that I told them that they liked hearing, it's just not in the budget.
Right.
So sometimes I'll have a conversation with the designers and I'll know the budget going in. So we stay out of some of the areas where we know there's no point in talking about Francois at $30 a square foot, right? That's just material.
Material only.
So if
you can go crazy, I mean.
So if the material, we're labor. So we know our labor costs.
Sure.
So we know what to charge. We'd not necessarily care how expensive the box is.
Yeah.
But most people that work with us have spent a good bit of money on the material. They don't want just anyone putting it in.
Sure.
But if you're buying it, I don't know if you know Floor & Decor, it's big here.
Yeah.
So if you're shopping at Floor & Decor, chances are you're not looking for a premier flooring install.
Right.
So, but sometimes the builders, the budget is Floor & Decor, in the lower end stuff especially. Everybody's house is their dream home, right? It could be a $600,000 house you're building. It's still their dream.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So they think that all the line items are a dream, but it's only the person living in multi-million-dollar homes that can afford some of the stuff we're talking about.
Sure.
Yeah. And we see that a ton, right?
Oh, yeah.
And that's, I can tell you, we do as hard of a deep dive. We love to send the customers to you ahead of time and to our other vendors, because we want them to see that we are going deeper to really understand in the pre-construction. We're going to do a whole series about that.
Yeah.
Of what goes into the home, because you're exactly right. They get these unrealistic estimates because the builder, listen, we'll give them the benefit of the doubt. They just didn't ask the question whether they did it on purpose to get that cost in low because they know, oh, well, maybe they're not going to go pick the floors. We don't do all the selections ahead of time like we like to do, or you like to do, Nathan. We're just going to put a little budget, or we like to call them an allowance in there. I love the word allowance.
That's so...
Yeah, it's allowance is short for you're in trouble.
Yeah.
And yet, okay, well, we know we've already got the contract nailed down. when they go figure out that their hardwood floors, we only gave them $2.50 a square foot or $3 a square foot. But we know from their lookbooks and their Pinterest and house pages that they want a beautiful wide plank floor. I mean, that was their vision. And, and it's real tough, but I would rather be honest and send them to a pro and level set them so we can adjust their budget ahead of time. So it's not that, like our last, one of our last episodes, you're 95% through your entire budget and your house is only 75% done.
Right.
And that's what happens.
Oh, all the time, I would imagine.
Oh, yeah.
If you're not realistic. But that goes into asking the right questions in the process, the hiring process and selling process. You want to ask the right questions that will allow your client to self-discover what their budget is and what they really want. Because a lot of times they don't know.
Yeah.
And you don't want to ask the questions because if you're helping them self-discover, they're going to spend a lot of money on hardwood, your quote's going up.
Mm-hmm.
Some builders, as you said, they don't want it to go up, so they don't want to talk about it till they're building the house. Mm-hmm. But if you let them self-discover by asking the right questions, not telling them, just by asking them, what happens is they start to believe in you a lot. Mm-hmm. They start to realize he's asking questions that I benefit from. You're not telling them your floors are going to be this, you just ask questions. The more questions you ask, you're basically, they'll sell themselves with their answers.
Yeah.
So then you're kind of like, well, you just told me that's not even close to the budget from what you just told me by the questions that you answered. So then they're like, and then they start to realize, this guy really is looking out for me.
Yeah.
And you really didn't do anything but ask the right questions. So a lot of selling, and I don't want to get into that, but a lot of selling is asking the right questions, not telling them anything.
Right.
And by them answering your questions, wow, this guy really is looking out for me.
Yeah.
Maybe I can stop thinking about this other guy's price because the only reason they called you back is they like you. And they're trying to figure out, how do I justify his cost?
Yep.
Yeah, that's right.
If they didn't want you and they wanted the lower guy, you wouldn't have got the call back. You would be sitting at the table. They would have already hired him.
Right.
The reason they called you is you're who they want. They're just trying to find a way to justify the cost. Yep. The easiest way for you to do that is ask them the right questions. Let them self-discover their own reasons and create their own value.
Yeah. And going back, you just mentioned something that triggers, and I hate to take us back, but I'm a little slow.
Yeah, me too. Go on.
But value, you said value, and I just had a quick builder question, which I guess homeowners and listeners could find value in this question. We're in the South here. We get a ton of humidity. What about Oklahoma? Do you get a ton of humidity?
Lots of humidity.
And a lot of our customers, they might not have been in a brand new home, or they lived in in Atlanta. We get a lot of customers that move into Atlanta that maybe have come from other climates, whether it's the north or out west, where they're drier, more consistent.
Colorado.
Yeah, you don't have that humidity, and they just don't understand what humidity does to a house. So we'll finish a house in the summer. We can do the best possible climate control, which is next to impossible. Sorry, the dirty little secret's out.
Yeah.
In our region to keep humidity out of the home during construction, right? And like you said earlier, Mike, moisture gets trapped in there. We're still dealing with moisture getting out of materials, let alone coming from the mills, because it's still fairly new.
Oh yeah.
And let alone just the environment we're putting it in. So we try to explain to our customers, listen, you're going to crank on you don't have radiant floor heating where it doesn't reduce the humidity in the home. Here we have forced air.
We're blowing it.
We're blowing it, baby.
Yeah.
You're in November, late November, December, you're going to get those cold days and you're going to turn on the heat for a week. And then all of a sudden you're going to call us and say, like you said earlier, Nathan, our house is settling. No, it's just because we're dealing with a wood product that has been under higher humidity conditions that now is just going to dry out. So,
and it's crown mold. It's
crown mold.
It's not just floors.
No, not just floors. Crown molding where the cabinets meet the wall.
Oh yeah.
Any of that, because as soon as that's what I try to explain, same thing is, and it's so funny because as a builder, it seems like when that happens too, no matter how much explanation you do, unless you're in the industry, it seems like you're just saying something.
Right, yeah.
You're right.
To get out of it.
Yeah, to get out of it, you're like, no, you turn on that heater you now have 19% relative humidity in your house. Like all the moisture has just been sucked out of that wood and it shrinks.
Yeah.
And
So we're getting those, we're getting those calls right now. So every job we did in the summer, now we're getting, there's cracks. And what we tell them as far as the floor goes, I can't speak on trim, but we say, hey, wait until we get through the winter.
Yep.
Right now you're barbecuing the floor.
Yep.
And then the cracks will close back up. And then after a few seasons, it's not going to move as much.
Yep.
Then we can address it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So right now it's as open as it's open as much as it's going to be.
Yep.
And it could be a lot of cracks. It could be one crack. But if we address it today, then it can't close back up like it wants to.
That's right.
So what we say, and we've got right now, we're just going to houses and we're saying, we got a note of this. We're going to readdress it in the summer when your AC's running.
Yep.
So we let them know we're not just blowing you off.
Right.
Like you just said, they think we're coming up with excuses, but we try to explain to them, even though you already told them, that it's going to expand and contract. But once you get acclimated after a few years, it won't move as much.
Yep.
And
Still
then you
gonna
just
move.
Still
Still
going to
gonna
move.
move.
Still going to
Humidity.
move. But I have a crack that goes right down my family room every winter.
Yep.
And when I resanded my floors after remodel, I glued it. I really addressed it before I sanded the floors. It's still coming back. It's just the way my house is built. I'm on a crawl space.
Okay.
And I have it encapsulated, but still an issue. I think for builders, you know the crown's going to crack.
Yep.
So is that part of your warranty where you must know by now that you're going back to touch up this crown?
Yeah. And we deal with that a lot. And I know you do too, Nathan. And this is what
Is that a line item in your quote?
a return trip?
Well, you know that you know you're going back.
I know I'm going back.
Yeah.
So do you have a way to quote? It might not be a line item, but it's got to be figured into your estimate.
We figured in.
You know you're going back.
We know we're going back. But to us, it's more about educating the customer that here's, when it comes to crown and things that are painted surfaces or where they touch the wall, it's going to, like you just said, it's going to come back. So it could be in the summer or in the late spring when the humidity starts getting out and they're opening doors and it just gets into the home. What ends up happening is those joints come back together.
Right.
Kind
of like the floor situation.
Just like exactly like the floor. And I tell them, we can come out in the middle of the winter and I can send my painter out and he can go through and fill those gaps with a caulk or whatever. But what you're going to find is in the summer, it's going to come back and then you're going to call me because there's going to be this weird bump along that
Pushes
joint
it.
where
Yeah,
it's pushing it's pushing the caulk out.
Yep.
So it's
I know that
really
firsthand. I remodeled my house and I moved out for a few months. And every corner of my crown has a crack in it.
Yeah.
And there's one where the painter tried to fix it, and now that's a bubble.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's wild. It's so much fun. I got to a couple of years ago with our lumber company. They took us to a cedar mill in Vancouver, which was fantastic because, again, getting to show our customers, hey, let me show you where these products come from. And it was so great because we got to see the whole process, which was, by the way, these logs have sat in this river for 9 months, saturated in water. Then they bring it through the whole mill because again, we created core values about 12 months ago. And one of them was, our number one was educating our customers. Hey, we set that in our company culture because we all know. But I've realized, you know what? We're not doing a good enough job explaining things to our customers all the time. And so I took a bunch of pictures to be like, because we'll drop off cedar, right? To set our cedar posts, and it'll rain or it'll snow on the cedar post, right? And hey, you got to get this out of the rain. You got to get this out. I had such a good time in Vancouver taking all the pictures. I'm like, by the way, at the mill where your cedar's from, this was it as a log in water. They set it outside in Vancouver before they ever deliver it to us. And getting to show these customers that these products are wet.
Yeah.
Wood is wet when it gets to us. And then you're right, we force air on it and off we go.
It's wild. It's wild. So
and they charge a lot of money for it.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
Well, we're kind of coming down to we could talk for another 2 hours, but I know we're coming down to the end, and I'd like to do like a quick lightning round. Michael, we just talked about humidity in a home. Is it worth the money if the builder gets the home conditioned before you put in the floors?
Yeah, absolutely. We talked about that. We've been going over that about should we put the floor in after sheetrock, and we're leaning where we don't do that as much.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the houses are too wet at that point.
Get the house dried. You're saying get the house dried out.
in.
Whether you turn on, is it a benefit to turn on the HVAC?
It is, but in new construction, you just can't. The builder can't get it on that early. There is a product called PU 280 that we can roll out on your subfloor, even though your subfloor is wet.
Mm-hmm.
You can go right over a wet surface and it'll block moisture.
Okay.
Wow.
It's made by a company called Vockel. It's a German company. I don't know Oklahoma if it's available, but it's called, a lot of builders. We are doing it, especially in basements and stuff.
Sure.
Just roll it out. Super easy to apply.
Okay.
Yep.
Number 2, what's the best hardwood option for pets, people with pets?
Luxury vinyl. We didn't talk much about it, but yeah, indestructible. We have a lot of homeowners will build these multi-million-dollar homes. And we had a woman say to us, hey, I really don't want to be a slave to my floor. So we put luxury vinyl in a really nice house, all in the basement, and she loves it.
Really?
She lets her dog in and out through the basement.
Which hardwood is the best for pets, do you think?
Yeah.
Oak or hickory?
Those are both really hard woods.
Okay.
I think it's the finish more than the density of the wood.
Okay.
But a lot of times the dogs are denting the wood is more than wearing out the finish. But Tropic HD... one of the selling points, it's better for dogs, surface scratches and things like that.
Okay.
There's what's called a Jenga chart, which shows the density of wood. White oak is way up above red oak.
Oh, okay.
And a lot of people have the idea that walnut is really hard. It is not. American walnut is a good bit softer than white oak. So I think white oak and hickory are the 2 hard ones.
I've always wanted to ask us, in your opinion, are reclaimed floors really worth it?
We're tearing out 2,000 feet of reclaimed heart pine to put in French white oak.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, and there it is, folks.
White oak.
Yeah.
White oak. What did you say earlier? White oak, white oak, white oak.
Yeah. And again, it's someone that can afford it, right? They got the money. They're spoiled that way.
If you were
a lot of floors that are reclaimed aren't even reclaimed. They're not even antique. It's kind of, there are some companies that are doing a great job. And there's some companies that are not.
If you were to remodel your house again, would you do real wood plank or a engineered?
If I was remodeling my house, which I would go with a solid because my house can't carry a 6-inch plank. The style of my house, I have 8-foot ceilings.
Okay.
But when you get into the houses that are being built today, they can handle any width.
Oh, yeah, they can.
So I personally would do a white oak character grade, and I'd probably do a 9-inch.
9-inch.
In engineered or real?
Oh, I would do it in engineered.
Really?
Yeah. Finished or unfinished?
Unfinished, always.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's our standard product. I found it in pure luck. My very first office, upstairs on the 2nd floor, the door swung in. We wanted to put wood floor down. Couldn't though because the door couldn't open. My wood floor guy was like, hey, we have a glue down product. This was back in 2016. Same thing as it was a misconception. I was like, no, I don't want pre-engineered. I don't want that. He's like, no. It's engineered on bottom. It's raw on top. We're going to sand and finish it. That's when I found that product. Love it. And you're exactly right. The glue down's water resistant.
Well, the biggest advantage of this pre-finished over site finished is we can maintain it. So when you wear it out, we can buff it and coat it. The problem with the pre-finish is we can't duplicate that staining process.
Yeah.
Also, some people don't have the money to put hardwood everywhere, so they do what they can afford. Worst case scenario, what happens mostly is someone will say, my dishwasher leaked. I can't buy the product anymore.
It's discontinued.
Once they discontinue it, we're dead.
And they do that a lot.
It happens every time.
Yeah.
Every product will get discontinued because they're not going to make something they can't sell.
So are you telling your customers, hey, if you're going to do this, you need to probably do yourself a favor and include so many extra boxes and put in the basement, or is there just...
So the last problem we had, we pulled 3 boxes out of the basement and it didn't match because of the aging.
Oh,
so
I never
it
thought
stuck
of that.
out like a sore thumb right in the middle of the kitchen. But we had no choice. We couldn't buy the material. They happen to have 2.5 boxes. We plenty of wood to fix the repair. but there's no denying that. And we couldn't sand it because it was a wire brushed.
Yeah.
Once you sand it, even though the thickness is, so the thought was let's refinish the whole thing, but the floors were really, really good shape. They're cool. They love them. It's just unfortunate that it actually was an ice maker.
You're right. Just walk across them.
Every time.
Just walk in this area a lot. Paint the floor
It's
here.
always an ice maker.
It's an
Oh,
ice
they're
maker.
the biggest pain.
I don't even know why, but just don't get
I don't
one.
know.
I know. I don't even.
They're a mold machine.
Yeah, I don't even want to put them in houses anymore because they stop working. Yeah, oh man.
This woman actually had her ice maker put out in the garage.
Yeah,
She's like, it's not coming back.
Smart.
Yeah, not a
I
bad
don't blame
idea.
It's in her garage.
Well, I can tell you, we've just had a master class in
Yeah.
hardwood flooring,
Yes,
and this has been awesome to have you on, Michael.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Listen, if someone else wants to get a hold of you so you can do a master class on their home, whether they're renovating, building new, need a home builder that needs a unbelievable hardwood floor guide, they need to call you.
Yeah.
How can people get a hold of you?
AuthenticHardwoodFlooring.com.
easy enough.
Yeah, that's the best way. 678-985-0110. Call our office. Never get an answer machine, ever. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Never get an answer machine. Give us a call. We've got great systems. We think we can help you become a better builder.
Awesome. Well, we hope you listeners enjoyed this and learned a ton. I feel like I've learned a ton.
I've learned a ton.
Yeah. And if you like this episode, please like and subscribe to us on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And stay tuned for, like we said, another new series coming up.
Pretty excited.
And we appreciate you being here, and we'll check you out on the next round of Building, Brews, and Barbecue.